Hey guys, it's Jake here with etrailer. Today we have a 2024 GMC Sierra 1500 AT4, and we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the Firestone Ride-Rite air helper springs. The idea behind air helper springs is so that you can help to support the rear end of your vehicle when you're towing a trailer, or if you're like my friend here, this is his personal vehicle that he uses for work. He owns a concrete company and he's got a lot of concrete tools in this toolbox and in the bed of his truck. So his truck is already constantly sagging. He's actually about a ½ inch lower in the rear than he is in the front. He does have a leveling kit on the front of it, but there's no reason why he should be sagging in the rear all the time. These are designed to help with that. It's an adjustable solution to be able to help support the rear end of your vehicle. Before we go any further talking about these details, we're going to show you what they look like. This is what our airbags are going to look like when they're installed. They will attach to the axle and to the frame, and essentially you can see how it's going to physically limit the travel of your vehicle, providing you that rear end support. How these airbags are going to work is you're going to add and subtract air into the air fittings that are now on the back of your vehicle, and you can add however much air into either bag if you have them run separate. The reason why I have them run separate is so that if he ever tows a heavy trailer and he's got a heavy load of tools on one side of his truck or the other, he can put 15 pounds on one side and 10 pounds on the other, and then it's going to level his truck back out, giving him the best ride possible. Now, if you want, you can add an onboard air compressor. It's very popular. I highly recommend it. You can add that onboard air compressor, and it'll allow you to adjust the air pressure in your bags on the fly. So if you're sitting at a stoplight, you still think the back of your truck is sagging too much, you can bump the pressure up a little bit. I think you'll get the most out of your airbags if you have that on there, because you will want to add and subtract air a little bit more. For my friend here, he is specifically towing his boat trailer and hauling the stuff in the bed of his truck. So he's going to know very quickly what PSI he needs to tow his boat and what PSI he needs to ride around with all the time with these tools in the back of his truck. What Firestone really thought about when they designed this airbag is that it's going to be a double convoluted design, which essentially means that they have two bubbles. It's one big airbag, but they're going to have two bubbles that are separated or created by a band in the middle. And essentially what that's designed to do is so that the airbag can act as a spring, and it helps the airbag to travel up and down in a straight motion rather than having one big airbag without the band in the middle that could fold over on itself when your suspension is compressing. These airbags are going to have a maximum load limit of 5,000 pounds. Now, for our particular truck here, for this 1500, that is way too much to put in or behind this truck. But it just goes to show you how strong the bags are and that they're not going to fail based off of the weight that this truck can handle. You will want to check in your owner's manual to see what your truck is rated for, and keep in mind that this set of airbags is not going to increase that carrying capacity. It's just going to help you to carry the weight that the truck's designed to carry a little bit better. The PSI rating for these bags is going to be between 5 and 100 PSI. You have to leave 5 PSI in at all times. It helps to keep the bag formed. If you let all the air out, what can happen is as your suspension is compressing, it will cause the bag to fold over on itself, causing premature wear. The other thing that it can do, which a lot of people don't think about, is when your suspension relaxes, so if you're doing any off-roading or just hitting any simple bumps, what that bag will do is if it doesn't have any air in it, it's not going to keep its shape, and if the suspension relaxes too far, the bag is going to suck in on itself, and that's not good for the bag either. Now we're going to do a quick comparison before we jump into the installation. The reason why I like airbags so much, I've had them on my truck for about 6 or 7 years now, is because they're adjustable. You can adjust the PSI in the airbags to match the load that you are wanting, that you're wanting it to match. So if he's pulling his heavy boat trailer, he can put a little bit more air in, and it's going to give him the best ride possible by him adjusting the air pressure. There are some other options out there that are not adjustable. We've got a set of sumo springs here and a set of Timberins. These are both going to be non-adjustable versions, and essentially what they do is they will replace your jounce bumper. The sumo springs are going to be a little less aggressive version of it. The Timberins are going to be the most aggressive version. The only reason I could see that you would need a set of Timberins on a truck like this is if you were close to the max capacity of your truck all the time. Then this is going to be the best option because it's going to be there. You don't have to worry about adding air or subtracting air. But if you're loaded onto a trailer, or if you've got a utility box like a camper shell in the bed of your truck and you're loaded down all the time, Timberlands work great. The thing is they have such a high capacity that you're very rarely anywhere close to it, and they can tend to give you a rough ride. Sumo springs are the softer version of that. It's a little bit stiffer than your factory jounce bumper, and it's going to engage faster than your factory jounce bumper. So if you don't want to have to worry about putting air or anything into your airbags, Sumo springs is the next best option. But me personally, I like the adjustability of the airbags. As far as this installation goes, I've installed a lot of airbags on different vehicles before. Some of them involve drilling, some involve cutting. This doesn't involve any of that. You will have to disassemble some of the factory hardware down there in order to make room for the airbags to go in place. I will say one note that is kind of difficult to understand if you don't know, but from the factory, the AT4s, the Trail Bosses, the High Countries, and the Z71s will all come with a small factory lift. If you have any of those models, like we have here, we've got the AT4, you will have to have a 2-inch spacer block. Firestone has them. You will want to get that kit because you're going to need it to get this installed. Otherwise, the airbags are not going to be tall enough to make up that space between the axle and the frame. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the install. To begin our installation, you're going to want to start with lowering your spare tire. I've got ours lowered and out of the way. You can crank that spare tire carrier back up so that it's also out of your way. You can see that our heat shield is pretty well blocking everything we need to get to. So we'll take this socket and remove the 6 bolts that are holding it in place. Let's set this to the side. To give ourselves more room between the axle and the frame, this is going to help with getting your airbags in place, getting the jounce bumpers off. If you're doing this from the ground, just take a regular car jack, lift up on the bottom of the hitch, and it's going to create space between the axle and the frame. Next, we're going to take a 10mm socket. I'm going to slide it up inside of your jounce bumper and remove the jounce bumper. Now we're going to take the long, it's going to be the biggest bolt in your kit, the black bolt that has the Allen head on it. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on here because I know from just my personal experience trying to take this bolt out, years down the road, if you try to get it out, it's very difficult because it will seize up inside of the frame just from water and moisture, stuff like that. So put a little anti-seize on that if you have it. It's not a huge deal if you don't, just prepare for the battle whenever you try to take them off. So we'll take this bolt. You're going to have one, it's kind of a angled hole here, and that's going to match up with this bolt. Take this angled piece, it's going to go on the outside of our frame rail, line up the 2 holes, and you're going to put this bolt right back where you removed your jounce bumper from. We're going to take a 6mm Allen key and run this up. We'll take a torque wrench and torque this bolt down to the factory's specifications for that jounce bumper bolt. Because we're installing these bags on an AT4 edition, we will have to remove these big spacer blocks. Use an 8mm socket to do that. To begin assembling our airbag assembly, we're going to take our air fitting, and you want to thread it into the top. This threaded portion here is threaded on the inside too. And you can see this little red portion, that is our thread locker. We want to tighten this air fitting until we cannot see that thread locker anymore, which is almost all the way. For this next step, if you are installing the airbags on a Z71, a High Country, a Boss Edition, or an AT4, you're going to need these Firestone spacers. We're installing it on this AT4, so we have to use these. You want to take the bolt that comes with your spacer with a lock washer that also came with our spacer. We're going to take it, you're going to have a flat side on the spacer and then this open side with these threaded holes. We're going to take that bolt, toss it down through there, and then we're going to thread this into the bottom of our airbag. To tighten that bolt down, you're going to need a 9/16 crow's foot and a small extension to reach down in here. It's very difficult to get to. And we just want to put a good amount of pressure on that to the point to where you get that lock washer to crush down. Then we'll take the short hex bolt that comes in our kit. It's got a flange collar on it. We're going to put some blue Loctite on it per our instructions for our spacer block. We're going to slide it into this slotted hole on our lower bracket, and then we're going to thread it into our spacer block. If you are not installing the spacer block, and you're not installing it on any of those 4 models that we mentioned, this bolt and this bracket will go directly into the bottom of this airbag. And you want to make sure that this bracket is loose, whether you're using the spacer block or not. Just make sure it's loose so that we can get it situated up on our vehicle. To make it easier on ourselves, if you don't have your truck jacked up as much as we do, we've got it up pretty high, and I could probably squish this enough to get it into place. But what you can do is, if you need a little bit more space, you can crush this airbag a little bit. Take a short piece of your airline tube, just cut like an inch or 2 off, and then put one of your fill valves on it, and it'll keep it a little bit shorter profile so we can fit it up here into place. And once you get it up there most of the way, like I said, we probably had enough room. You can just pop this thing out, push down on it, lift it up into place. Now this part is very important. You can see it just popped up into place there. If you can move the airbag around like this, it is not in the proper place. There's a set bolt in there that will cause it to stop spinning, and that's where you want it to find. Then grab your flathead bolts. They'll have a small Allen key in the top, and they're going to slide down. There's a little groove cut in here, or a bevel cut in here. We're going to take this bolt, slide it down, and then on the underside of that, we're going to insert or thread on one of our flange nuts. On the front side of our assembly, so towards the cab, there's this wiring protector, just a metal bracket. We're going to have 3 of these T40 torque spit screws we'll have to remove in order to get our hardware up on this back side. Once your bracket is loose, we can lift our nut up and do the same thing to the front bolt that we just did to the rear one. Now we can take our small hex bolts that come in our kit, put a flat washer on it, and these are going to be for the back side of these brackets, or I guess the wheel side of them. Do the same thing, put a flange nut on the bottom, and we're going to do the same thing to the front. Then you want to take a 7/16 socket and come through and just snug each one of these down, and we'll come back later with a hand tool and make sure they're all nice and snug. With our lower bracket all secured, we will take a 9/16 wrench and snug up that bolt that's on the bottom. You want to make sure that your airbag is as straight as you can get it. Ours has a little bit of a wiggle to it, but not too bad. Before we put our nut on the top of our passenger side airbag, you want to take your heat shield. We're going to pull this airbag down, sneak our heat shield in, and then lift it back up into place. You want to be sure that this panel here is lining up with your exhaust. After all, that's what it's for. Make sure that our peg is still sticking up inside of there. Then we can take our lock nut and thread it on the top. Then you want to take a 15/16 wrench or socket and tighten down that nut. Once you get the one side done, you want to repeat that same process on the other side of the vehicle. The only thing that's going to be different on the driver's side is you're not going to have that heat shield. After you get both of your airbags installed, you need to start running your airlines. Depending on if you're putting an onboard air compressor on or not, will depend on how you're going to run your airlines. We did not put an onboard air compressor. We just put manual fills because this is a friend of mine's vehicle, like I said earlier, and he is just going to be essentially leaving it at the same PSI because he's got the same load in the bed of his truck and the same trailer that he likes to pull with his boat on it. So to run your airlines manually, for the manual fill at the back, you just want to connect the airline into the top of the bag, make sure that it's got a firm click inside of that fitting. Run your line up, zip tie it along the way to your factory wiring. Be very careful with this red line. If you get the red line that comes in your kit, it is not as flexible as black airline tubing. And then you just want to connect it into the back of the fitting. Do the same thing for the driver's side. And then if you look on the front, then you just want to drill out the bottom holes of your license plate, and you can put the fittings right through there, attach your nuts on there, and then this is going to be your fill points. Your kit does come with a little bracket that you can bolt up or actually attach to this bar here from your hitch with a couple of zip ties. I don't really prefer those because when you try to put air in it, the zip tie is not strong enough to hold it from spinning. So that's why I always go with these two in the license plate. You can actually take these two out if it's a little bit more convenient for you to put them up here, but the bottom ones work just fine too. So now that we've got all that stuff done, I've got 50 PSI in each of our airbags. We need to use some soapy water to pressure test it, all of our fittings. If you have the manual fill, for this particular install, all you have to do is spray 4 different fittings. You're gonna have to spray the fittings in the tops of the bags, and then we're gonna have to spray the back sides of our fitting going out through our license plate. You just wanna spray right at the top, and you wanna watch for any rapid forming bubbles or larger bubbles to form here. You can see we don't have any on this fitting. We'll just move around until we know that we don't have any. If you have any of those fittings that are leaking, chances are you either have a pinch line, it's deformed if you didn't cut it correctly. We recommend using a set of airline cutters. We have some pretty inexpensive sets on our website. These are some nicer sets, but if you ever are doing any other automotive work, a set of these are nice to have in your garage. It basically just has a flat platform and a razor blade that cuts straight down on the airline and doesn't kink it. And that's what you need in order to make a clean fitting, clean connection into those fittings. Once you know everything's good and nothing's leaking, that's gonna do it for the installation. All you need to do is put your spare tire heat shield back up into place and then lift your spare tire back up. But hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not this kit's right for you.